Welcome to episode 105 of Wheel Bearings. I'm Sam Abul-Samad from Navigant Research.
And I'm Rebecca Linland from RebeccaDrives.com.
And we're coming to you live from the New York Auto Show at the Jacob J. Javits Center. We're sitting in the sanctuary interior of a 2019 Lincoln Navigator to find a nice quiet place to talk about some of the stuff we've been seeing here. Rebecca, what have you seen here?
Well, I've seen a lot of really interesting vehicles in terms of emphasis on sedans, which is kind of funny, like some of the concept cars. We saw the Genesis Mint Coupe concept, which is a two-door urban electric vehicle, really designed kind of for people that live in cities around the world. And so that was a very elaborate to-do that they did. That kind of stood out in my mind. Mercedes actually, they unveiled several new SUVs, really dramatic designs in keeping with their design language that they've done over the last few years.
Yeah, they've got the new GLS really was
Right.
the highlight in terms of a new product for them.
Yep.
Their big three-row SUV.
Yes, redesigned GLC is also out as well. And then, of course, we saw the Lincoln Corsair that you went to. So
Yeah, the Corsair. Let's talk about that one. Since we're here on the Lincoln stand, the Corsair is Lincoln's new entry-level model. It replaces the MKC in the lineup, and like the rest of Lincoln's recent introductions, it ditches the MK badging, gets a real name. Now it's the Corsair. It shares its basic platform architecture with the new Escape that we saw a couple of weeks ago, but it's really quite different because they've made it both lower and wider than the Escape. It's 4 inches lower than the Escape and 2 inches wider. So it's got pretty similar interior volume, but it's packaged very differently. And talking to the designers, David Woodhouse, who's the director of design for Lincoln, and Rob Gilardi, who was the design manager on the Corsair, the goal really was to take the Lincoln design language that we've seen evolving through the Navigator and the Aviator that we saw at the LA Auto Show, and bring that to a smaller vehicle. And so you've got the Lincoln family DNA there, but it's not just an exact scaled down replica of those vehicles. Each one has its own distinct flavor. This Navigator we're sitting in is a little more boxy. The Aviator is longer, got more of a sweep, kind of, especially the downward rear profile of it. And then the Aviator, has got a shorter, wider, a more sportier profile to it, to appeal to both to a younger audience, but also to empty nesters, which is another, target market for this thing. So what do you think of the Corsair?
I think the Corsair looks really, really nice. I like the design language a lot. I like the styling of it. I think the size of it's really appealing. With more people living in cities, there is more opportunity for smaller luxury vehicles. And I think they've done a really nice job in it. Lincoln, I think just the interiors are beautiful. I mean, it's even just looking at the Navigator that we're sitting in, but the Corsair, they brought a lot of those same very elegant, simplistic design language to it. I am getting a little tired of piano black.
I hear you there. I definitely agree with that.
But I think overall, I think they've done a really nice job with it. And, I forgot to mention the other sedan that I saw was the Cadillac CT5.
Yeah.
And sadly, the piano black reminded me of that.
Yes.
But, I think that Lincoln has, as we talked about last week, I think they've done a really judicious job of rolling out these names and transitioning from that awkward MK, TZ, XYZ kind of thing to names that people can relate to that are both heritage and at the same time modern, really, and the Navigator, of course, really started that whole trend.
Right.
And
the Navigator was the one Lincoln model that always kept its name. It never did adopt the MK branding. It always from
Right,
the time it launched 20 years ago.
And when they redesigned it, was that 2 summers ago? I feel like 2 years ago. I mean, it was just stunning, and I think, and you're right, Sam. They never deviated from that. Similar to what Cadillac has done with the Escalade, they haven't deviated from that either. But I think that Lincoln has just done a masterful job of rolling these vehicles out.
Yeah, and looking at the MKC, they've done some really interesting design details on there. For example,
You mean
like
the Corsair.
Yes, the Corsair. Too many names. The Corsair, they've done some really interesting design details on there. One of the things that Rob Gilardi talked about in our briefing the other day was, in looking at the design, he referred to the what we typically call the belt line as an anti-wedge line, because if you look at a lot of modern vehicles, they tend to sweep upwards towards the rear, and giving it kind of a wedge profile. And Lincoln has deliberately gone in the opposite direction, and the Aviator actually is even a little bit more extreme. But in general, that belt line that usually sweeps upwards is actually fairly horizontal on the Corsair and on the Aviator, and it's quite apparent when you look at it, especially in contrast to the MKC. It makes it look a little bit longer, a little swoopier, and then the roof line kind of dips down a little bit towards the back, and there's more rake to the rear glass. And I think it gives it a really distinct look, and kind of sets it apart. And then one of the other things, when you look at it in isolation, and compare it to the Escape that we saw, it might appear that belt line is actually a little bit higher than on the Escape, but it turns out because of they've changed the proportions and lowered the roof a bit. The greenhouse is a little bit shorter, but the belt line is also lower in the Corsair than it was in the MKC, so you still have better outward visibility from it. And then inside, one of the neat design touches they've done is, because it's smaller, they tried to emphasize horizontal lines in the dashboard to create that visual impression of being wider. And then the console, this Navigator we're sitting in has this big, massive center console that really divides the two sides of the vehicle. And in the Corsair, it's much lower. The main console is much lower down, so you have a more open feeling. But then there's a center console with the climate control switches and everything that cantilevers out from the center of the dash and kind of floats above the other console. And then there's a storage bin underneath there, and when you close the lid on that, a lot of modern cars, you have the puddle lamps on the side that will project the logo down on the ground when you open the door. And the Corsair has that, but it also has another little one that projects the Lincoln Star logo onto that the lid of the storage bin. So just a lot of nice little detail touches.
Right.
So really looking forward to driving both this one and the Escape later on this year.
Yeah.
They both go on sale later this fall.
Right. They really don't look anything alike either.
No, you would never guess that there's shared mechanical DNA under the two.
They really don't look anything alike.
Yeah.
So some of the other things that we saw, the 2020 Nissan 370Z, the 50th anniversary. And then Audi has a 50th anniversary.
Yeah, Audi is celebrating their 50th anniversary in the U.S. Market, and Nissan is celebrating their 50th anniversary of performance. So they have 50th anniversary versions of both the Z and the GTR, which are mainly just appearance packages. But they're pretty cool. The Z is white with red trim, red stripes, harkening back to the early 70s Datsun at that time, race cars that were run by Peter Brock and others. And it was quite an iconic livery, and that's what they've brought to the Z. And then the GTR is a blue with a white stripe that runs over the top of the car. And just it looks fabulous.
And who signed your poster?
Mr. Peter Brock.
Nice.
Yeah, so,
that's awesome.
Yeah, and it's a poster of showing the original first generation Z and the current 370Z.
That's very cool.
Yeah, and for Audi, I think what did they have?
So their event is this evening.
Yeah, so
I believe, and I know I was trying to remember, but Volkswagen is actually showing the base camp edition of the Atlas.
Yep.
They're trying to get it approved. It's not 100% yet. It's more of a concept. But what they're doing with that, I had a roundtable with Scott Keogh, the president of Volkswagen North America, and in his mind, it's really about that adventure spirit that people are having, whether they're an urbanite or a suburbanite. People still want that idea of looking like they have a very active lifestyle, even if they go camping maybe once a year or not at all. And so the Atlas features custom body kit, there's a lift kit, there's a custom wheels, all-terrain tires. It's kind of like the Nissan version of the Pathfinder.
Is it the Pathfinder or the Armada? I can't remember.
I thought it was the
well, they've done
Creek.
Oh,
Rock
yeah.
Creek Pathfinder.
Yes, that's it.
Yes. So it's this idea of it's interesting. It's this idea of almost like a military type, and I bring that up because that's very much in fashion these days. Also, wearing camo, wearing this really sort of the Army Navy kind of look, the Army Navy store, where people will go in and buy a 20-year-old Army jacket because they look really cool. And we're starting to see that same look come out in vehicles as well. The green, that kind of hunter green look to it. And so Volkswagen is trying to do this. They're looking at it as a concept right now, but hopefully being able to bring this to market ideally fairly soon in the next year.
I imagine we'll probably see it because it's not a real expensive thing to do.
Right. Why not?
And given that there's a demand for that, it's something that they can charge probably significantly more than it actually costs them to build. So there's probably good margins on that. And we've seen other manufacturers do similar things. That was Honda's whole theme behind the Passport,
right?
Bringing back the Passport. And of course Jeep is still extremely popular, and they sell a lot of the Trailhawk and Rubicon versions of the various Jeep models. So it's I think that they would be foolish not to do it.
Yes.
But sticking with Volkswagen for a minute, they also showed the Tarok pickup, which is
that's right. Yes.
It's designed for the Brazilian market.
Yes.
It's based on the MQB platform, which is used for the Golf and the Jetta and actually almost everything VW builds now, including the Atlas. But it's a smaller pickup. It's a compact pickup. Smaller than what we think of as today's midsize trucks like the Ranger and Chevy Colorado and so on, and Tacoma. And it's front wheel drive. But did you get a chance to take a look at it?
I haven't taken a look at it yet. I had to go right from that meeting to something else, and so no, I haven't.
So I did go over and take a look at it this morning. It's actually quite interesting because even though it's smaller than what you typically, what we're typically selling as midsize pickups in the U.S. market today, it's got some very interesting details. Like, for example, the bed. It's a unibody, like a Honda Ridgeline. But it's, the bed is very deep.
Yeah.
So it would actually be quite practical for hauling stuff. So even though length and width wise it's not that huge, it's deep enough that you could probably put at least 10, 15 bags of mulch in the back of that thing. And then it's also got, if you remember back to the old Chevy Avalanche, it had that midgate design. So it had a fold down panel between the bed and the cabin, so you can fold up the rear seats in this thing because it's a crew cab. It's a 5-seater. You can fold up the rear seats, fold down this panel, and then extend the bed length.
That's really
out
cool.
to I think it's about 6 feet long.
Yeah,
6 maybe it might even be 8 feet. But it's you have for longer objects. It actually makes it very useful as a small truck.
Right.
As opposed to something like if you think back to the late 70s, early 80s, the old Rabbit pickup, the VW Rabbit pickup. That was awesome. and of course, the Dodge, was it the Charger pickup? I think Chrysler built one based off the Omni.
Oh my gosh, that's wrong.
Yeah, but those were much smaller and really not very useful.
Well, and to what Scott talked about, looking at these concepts is, again, that focus on the idea that there's starting to be an acceptance for smaller pickup trucks from an urban standpoint, and being able to have that pickup truck that you want without it being a gigantic city car that you can't park or that you get charged extra in a garage or something, but have the utility of that pickup, so that when you go out for the weekends and you go away, that you have the utility of something like a pickup truck. So they are focused on filling in some of those white spaces that have traditionally been domestic, and saying, our customer wants this. They're starting to see that kind of hand raising going on from Volkswagen consumers saying, I live in the city. I don't want a giant full-size SUV or pickup truck. And what do you have for us? So he also mentioned that, for those people that go off-road, a lot of times a smaller pickup truck is more appealing, because you can go to a base camp, as it were. You can get places and do some light off-roading in it. So it's not going to be as fully off-road capable as something like the original Touareg was, but it is going to have some decent capabilities, is what they're looking at and thinking about. So Audi is actually they have the all-new 2019 Audi Q3 and the refreshed 2019 TTRS and the 2020 R8. So those were the three that they're looking at bringing to us.
Yeah, and of course they've also got the e-tron Quattro on the stand.
Yes.
In a very prominent place.
And then an A7 also.
Yeah, A7 won the World Luxury Car of the Year award this morning. And actually Jaguar was the big winner at the World Car of the Year awards this year. They won 3 with the I-Pace. They won World Car of the Year, World Green Car, and World Design of the Year.
Wow.
With the I-Pace. So they took home a bunch of trophies today. So let's see, what else did we have? Mazda. They finally launched the CX-5 diesel. And
wow, that's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, they originally announced plans to put a diesel engine in the Mazda 6 way back in 2012.
Wow.
And then in 2013, they launched their sports car, their endurance racing program with a diesel-powered prototype that ran in 2013 and 14. It actually did quite well, won some races in the LMP2 class. And then they struggled to get the Mazda 6 diesel to market with trying to meet emission standards. And then when Dieselgate happened with Volkswagen, it got a lot tougher. And then they announced the new CX-5 and said, we're going to put the diesel in there instead. And that was in 2016. And now it's 2019, and you can finally actually order a CX-5 diesel.
Do you think there's demand for that in the States? I mean, maybe globally I can see that, but even then...
I'm having a hard time with it. Right now, for now at least, you can only get the diesel in the Signature all-wheel drive, the highest trim level. So it's like $42,000.
Oh my God! We've had this discussion about the price of the CX-5.
Exactly. Yeah.
Come on.
And so I mean, it comes fully loaded. You do get a significant bump in towing capability. The gas engine CX-5 can only tow 2,000 pounds.
Okay.
You get 3,500 pound towing capability, which is still, for a compact crossover, that's that's about best in class right now. But still, if you really need to tow, you're probably going to get something bigger. I don't see too many people towing with a compact crossover.
I know. I mean, really, and you want so much room when it comes to towing, in terms of security. So what are you really towing? If
maybe a couple of jet skis,
right?
I think that's about
pounds?
it. Yeah, 3,500 pounds. Yeah. So,
wow. Yeah, so
that's. I don't think they're going to sell very many of them. I think it's. Okay, we did it. Now quit complaining. It's here. You want it? Buy it. Leave us alone.
Wow. So I just wanted to come back to Cadillac for a second.
Yeah.
I had dinner last night with Steve Carlisle, president of Cadillac globally, and Deborah Wall, the new marketing director as well. And, I think the CT5 is a very nice looking vehicle. It's very nice looking. I continue to struggle with the interior of Cadillac. they just, I feel like they just are not lacking. They're lacking in refinement. There's a lack of elegance. It was very. I found it to be very crowded. Have you seen it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've sat in it.
I don't know. I wanted there to be a simplicity to it that doesn't exist.
It's probably because they have the extra volume knob.
Yeah. Well, they did talk about the redundancy, yes, of the volume.
See, if they took out that second volume knob, it would be perfect. For years we've complained about, especially on Cadillacs, with the touch controls for volume and climate controls, and we said, just give us back regular old knobs. It works so well. There was no reason to change it, and we did that with other brands, with Honda in particular, and so now. They're bringing back volume knobs, and of course on the CT5 it actually, now we get two volume knobs that are about 10, 12 inches apart. One just below the screen that's on the dashboard, and then a second one that's down on the console in front, just ahead of the main rotary control knob.
Yes.
So I asked last week at the Backgrounder on the CT5, I asked one of the interior design people, so why the second control volume knob? And he said, well, some customers like to have it up top, some like to have it below. We wanted to give them the option, give them the choice. And plus you also still have the switches, the volume switches on the steering wheel. So you have three different ways to change it. Frankly, I think that's I'm all for providing people with choice, but sometimes I think as a designer you have to make some decisions and do a little editing. Or as a writer, I mean, you have to pull a few words out.
Sam wrote a 216-word review for my 200-word website, and I made him change it. I compared the interior of the CT5 with the Mercedes GLC, which while one is a sedan, obviously one is an SUV, but it's in some ways a similar customer. And they're just night and day. I mean, the Mercedes steering wheel was incredibly simple, very quiet. And when I sat in the CT5, it didn't give me that feeling of a sanctuary. It didn't give me that feeling of being relaxed, of luxury. It gave me a feeling of, I don't even know what button to press. And it just... I was a little disappointed. I think the leather on the seats was nicer. The back seats were nicer. They had more form and shape than others that I've seen. But I want Cadillac especially to just up their game a little bit when it comes to the interior. The other part is...
Although, granted, yes. I will say that it is much better executed than the XT6 was.
Yes, they are getting better.
The materials and finish.
Right. They are getting... And I saw the XT4 a few months ago. I hadn't seen it here yet. But that's another interior that I remember thinking, it's just not really where I want it to be. The other side that they're wrestling with, very honestly and forthright, is the marketing of Cadillac and what does that look like. And so it will be a story that I'll be following very closely to see what they do in the next couple of months. I think that they're in full rebuilding mode, moving from here in New York, moving back to back to Detroit. I think that was such a good thing to do. Regroup. The brand has been through a lot in the last few years, and the product had been there, but the marketing wasn't. And so now, hopefully, they can get their act together a bit. Yes.
Yeah, I spent some time earlier this afternoon talking with Brendan Vivian, the brand manager, and Andrew Smith, the designer, talking about CT5 and Cadillac in general. The theme around the CT5, or one of the big themes around the CT5, is the idea, that there's a decent number of people out there, even though everybody seems to be going for SUVs and crossovers, there is a significant population of people that are SUV rejectors that just don't want a utility vehicle.
For sure.
And personally, I am one of them.
Right.
I don't want an SUV. I have no interest in one. Except for those rare occasions when I might actually want to go on a camping trip or something. But For the most part, I am not interested in a higher riding vehicle like that. And so there is a population of those people. And that's who they're trying to appeal to. And sedans have always been a key part of Cadillac over the
Yes.
over its history, and so they want to preserve that. And in China, there's still a significant population of people who want sedans.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting about the CT5 is, one of the things they talked about, they showed this graph that shows the current Cadillac lineup and the where they're going with Cadillac. And they show the profiles of their current models, relative to size. And the CT5 or the CTS, the existing CTS, the XTS, and the CT6, there's a lot of overlap in terms of size and configurations there, and they want to get rid of that, and so the CT5 is actually shorter overall than the CTS, but it does have more interior volume, more passenger space than the CTS did. And then later this year we'll see the CT4, which is another sedan, which is even smaller than that. So the way they described it is, the CT5, they see that actually as more right sizing of the ATS, actually make an upsized ATS rather than a downsized CTS.
Right.
Because they still have the CT6 in the lineup for the foreseeable future anyway.
Right.
And apparently in the China market especially, because one of the things in China is over the years, a lot of customers, especially for premium vehicles in China, have preferred to be driven rather than to drive. And so most manufacturers have offered long wheelbase versions of sedans that they sell only in China for those customers. And Cadillac has been among those. They've done long wheelbase versions of the STS and the CTS and even the ATS in China. But they're seeing now with a lot of the younger customers that they actually prefer to drive themselves. And so they have no plans to do a longer wheelbase version of CT5. They see CT5 as it is as being the right size for that customer. And then there'll be an ATS or a CT4, which will be actually a little bit smaller than the ATS today. That'll be coming within the next year. So it's interesting.
It is. Well, and one thing we always have to think about are these brands on a global basis. And China is the world's largest market. So it makes sense that they're focusing on what's happening in China. But, to your point of that younger people just want to drive themselves, as we touched on a couple weeks ago when my nephew was driving the Buick, the appeal of sedans is so interesting for a younger consumer who grew up in SUVs, who most likely learned how to drive in an SUV. And, you can discover the joy of driving in a sedan very easily. And it will be intriguing to watch as younger buyers come into the marketplace in droves and really start moving that needle as baby boomers retire, and you start to get this more of a significant reshaping of who's in the marketplace, to see what the role is of sedans and to see if it goes back to a 60-40 split as opposed to the 70-30.
It's not impossible. It could certainly happen.
Yeah.
And one of the advantages that manufacturers have now is with their flexible platforms that they're developing. They can use the same architecture to build sedans, coupes, utility vehicles, and even Ford, who last year made a big news by basically walking away from cars in the U.S. market. They're still offering cars in overseas markets, and the same flexible architecture that underpins the Escape and the Corsair here is also used for the new Focus that's sold overseas.
Right.
And I think for the Fiesta as well. So it's if the market shifts back, they could very easily shift back towards different form factor vehicles. Speaking of young buyers,
yeah,
the Hyundai Venue. What do you think
I
about
haven't
that?
seen it yet.
Oh, okay.
I know. I got over to the stand and then I ran into some people and then I haven't seen it yet. It's cute.
Yeah, so it's Hyundai's new entry level crossover. And it's smaller than the Kona on the outside.
Wow, that's small.
But you can, you can. I sat in the back seat, and I can fit in the back seat.
Well, I think we do have to keep we do have to be careful because so as a for instance, I had an inquiry on my site about from somebody who said I want to get my daughter a small crossover. She's learning how to drive, but I don't want a subcompact, and because it's too small then. And so there's
too small in terms of usability and packaging, or for safety.
In his mind, for safety,
okay.
That they were too small. And so the idea that young people are going to want the smallest ones, I don't know if that's entirely true as long as their parents are sort of calling the shots. As they move out of the house, then we could see the appeal. But the Hyundai Venue is adorable. I mean, it's very the front of it looks very Volvo-like.
Yeah, it does kind of have a little bit of the Volvo XC40 look to it.
Right.
The one they're showing here on the stand, has the two-tone, the contrasting
the white roof
color.
I love that.
Yeah, and so it's quite a cute little vehicle. I think maybe to that point, about safety, even though it's a smaller vehicle, Hyundai, as with the rest of their lineup, is making a lot of driver assist features, active safety features,
That's
standard
awesome.
equipment.
Yeah.
So even
huge.
on the most entry level models, you get forward collision alert and automatic emergency braking available.
Wow. Do you get rear traffic alert?
That's available as an option, I think.
Yeah. That rear cross traffic alert, I find that is one of the most helpful driver assist features, and I wish that they would start adding that on. I don't know what it takes to do that. Like, is it more complex?
It's not that complex. It's actually they use the same hardware for blind spot monitors and cross traffic alert, and it's two short range radar sensors mounted in the rear bumper in the rear corners of the vehicle, one on each side. And so as you back out of parking space, especially if you're parked between, say, a Navigator and an Escalade, you can't see what's coming down the aisle in the parking lot. But as you start to back out, those sensors can detect if there's either a pedestrian or another vehicle coming down the aisle, and they will give you an alert. And in some cases, the Venue doesn't do this, but in some cases, they even are incorporating automatic braking.
Right.
So if there's somebody coming, it'll if you don't hit the brakes, it'll brake for you.
Right.
In fact, I think the Corsair has that available as an option.
I just feel like that is something, and again, this guy had reached out to me, and that was one of the things that I thought was almost a requirement for a new driver in particular, but I just find it so incredibly helpful to, because you can't see, it literally is, blind, and so to be able to have that on vehicles, I just think that's one of the driver assist features that I find to be incredibly valuable, and so I would hope that they would start to expand and provide more and more of the cross traffic alert on especially on these types of vehicles where they might be smaller, designed to appeal to a younger consumer and even an older consumer too. It's nobody's good at backing up in my mind. Everybody encounters this blind spot, especially as SUVs become more and more ubiquitous. So I just think that rear cross traffic alert is something that's really, really appealing, and I'd love to see that on more vehicles. That's my little soapbox.
So staying with the Korean brands for a moment, did you see the Kia Habanero?
No, I got the hot sauce.
Okay. So the Habanero is a little concept, and talking to the folks from Kia, the concept that they're showing is all electric. It's on an electric, a dedicated electric platform, and it's similar in size to the current Niro, but because it's a dedicated EV platform, they've moved the wheels out to the corners, so you got minimal overhangs, maximize the interior space, skateboard design, and on the concept, they're talking about it having level 5 automated driving capabilities, which it won't, for a long time. But talking to James Bell from Hyundai, or from Kia, the communications director at Kia, he said this is very, very close to the design of the next Niro, the next generation Niro.
Wow.
So for the overall shape and design of this thing. 2 more minutes. is very close to the design of the of what we're going to see probably 2021 Nero, I think.
Right.
So probably sometime next year or maybe the year after.
Well, I think they've absolutely killed it with those designs. I think the Hyundai Kona is just great looking. The Kia Niro, I love that size of vehicle.
Yeah.
It's practical, fun, plenty of utility for those SUV rejectors. And in some ways, I think that this is also what Ford is envisioning with their cars, their quote unquote, their non-cars. But that size, that shape, that configuration, that level of utility. So it's I think the Koreans have just killed it in that segment.
All right, let's hit one last one before we get kicked out of our sanctuary.
Yes, exactly.
Here. The Porsche Speedster.
Oh,
the
my gosh,
Speedster.
that is so gorgeous.
Yeah.
It's just gorgeous. And Porsche it's one of those brands that they can, there's going to be buyers for it, right? That there's Porsche collectors that are going to buy that thing. But I just think they just keep hitting it out of the park. They're so consistent and so true to their corporate values, to their design language. And it's just fabulous. And we're getting some really dirty looks from people here.
Yeah. from one Lincoln product representative. Okay, so yeah, the 911 Speedster is going to be a limited run, end of the line for the current generation 911 before they start building the new ones, and I'm sure that they've already all been spoken for.
Yes.
So,
and just one thing on Porsche, the Porsche Cayenne Coupe is coming out also. Yeah. This is sort of a competitor to the BMW X6, their answer to that. Coming out in a few months. They have one prototype that's in Shanghai, so it's not here today, but they're hoping to get at least some that we can see and touch and feel in the coming months.
All right. And with that, we'll wrap up our discussion of the 2019 New York Auto Show. Thanks for joining me here in this lovely Lincoln Navigator, Rebecca.
Yes. Nice to see you in person.
And we'll talk to you again next time. Bye.
Bye.